far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 women growing strong. 100 women where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny. Woman, woman.
As people of African descent, we offer this land recognition in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions toward decolonization. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. By Kay Johnson. Welcome to 100 ABC Fireside Chats. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold project initiated by co-authors and co-founders, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, and Donna Jones Simmons. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as our website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. In addition to our fireside chats on topics that matter to our communities, such as education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, trade union, and so much more, we offer biennial book launching galas and biannual symposiums. The co-authors and co-founders would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for attending today's fireside chat. We know that you will find these sessions educational and inspirational. So sit back, relax, and hear from our brilliant and talented honorees.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. So I understand that this is the last time we are getting together before the January season begins. So our parting conversation for the summer is going to be about elder abuse and spousal abuse. I'm still seeing a name across the screen. Is everyone seeing me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So today we have two guests with us, Ms. Nicole Waldron and Ms. Vera Herlock. And so I'm going to introduce both of our panelists and we'll get into the discussion. So Nicole Waldron is an advocate for mental health and also for violence against women and families. And she works in the area of, and volunteers both, in the area of co-op housing, and is an esteemed event specialist. I've had the pleasure of working with Nicole, and I can say that she is the type of person that really takes care of every detail. So if you have an event, I'm doing a little plug for you, Nicole. If you have an event, she's the person to go to. You know, we 100 ABC women like to support each other's businesses, so that's very good. And also with us today, I should say good afternoon, Nicole.
Good afternoon, Janelle.
Good afternoon. And with us today also is Ms. Vera Herlock. And Vera worked as a nurse for 37 years, a vocation that she absolutely thoroughly enjoyed, and she loves helping other people. Now she's retired. Lucky you, you're looking fantastic. And I was joking with her earlier that I want whatever serum she's taking to look so fabulous. She continues to make herself available to render services. So Vera, welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
So this topic that we're going to talk about is extremely sensitive. And as I started working in the child welfare stream, which is a new career for me, I learned that into what they're referring to these days is intimate partner violence, what we call spousal abuse or abuse of women in the past. It's expanded. There's men being abused, and also it's really about boyfriends and girlfriends, and not just wives and husbands and so on. And one of the issues that we've talked about a lot is the human trafficking, which involves women, and a lot of Indigenous and Black women, especially, and children. So it's very sad. I also was corrected the other day that the abuse of women in particular is now 1 in 3 women have
Yes.
suffered some sort of abuse. So I think things are worsening, not getting better, despite all the advocacy and work over the years on these issues. The other topic, which is married with this one here this afternoon, is elder abuse. And so we're going to start there. I'd like to talk a little bit about this issues, because I think that as people of African descent, we have a really unique relationship with our elders, and there's a whole story to eldership that is a little bit different than being a senior in this society, where you're you have an expiry date and you're almost put out to pasture. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that concept, both of you.
Well, I'm going to respect my elder in the room and let Vera go first.
Growing up back in the Caribbean, thank you very much, Janelle. Growing up back in the Caribbean, I remember anyone that I was older than, they would call me Miss. So I grew up with this thinking that, okay, so I am the elder person. So you had to respect your siblings that are older than you, especially the firstborn. Right? When it comes to senior, I keep smiling whenever Janelle talks about we have an expiry date, because it was quite a shock to me to see how people treat seniors in this country. Not all seniors are treated that way, but a lot of them. And because back home, you're raised, a lot of us are raised by grandparents. And so you learn to respect your grandparents, And even your aunts and your uncles, they're all to be respected. That's the way I was brought up. In this country here, it's a different thing altogether. A lot of respect is not there. And you can notice that the respect has become so bad that a lot of the scams are directed at seniors, and it's very, very sad. A lot has been directed at my mother, and even for myself, that I won't even touch on a link. I'm sure Donna must be wondering why I call her so often. I'm afraid to touch on a link because a lot of them are scams. But respect is important, and treating the elderly, we have to know where we came from, and one day we are going to be the same place. And I do believe what you what goes around comes around again. I do believe that. All right. I will defer to Nicole.
I love what you said, Vera. Growing up in Trinidad, you always knew that the people that were older than you would call them miss or you call them auntie. And it was that honor and that respect. And it's interesting as we come out here to North America, in some places we're still able to maintain the eldership, those that we really truly honor. I'm recognizing though that some of our mature individuals do not like to be called elder. They feel like we're aging them. And I think ageism has caused this oh, don't call me an elder, which is really sad because it's such a name of honor. And then we come to our seniors, and I recognize, especially in North America, the seniors really come from, it's when you stop working, when they decided somewhere in society at age 65 that someone was deemed a senior and you had to retire and not work. And so it's interesting, the dichotomy of how we look at seniors now. And I know, and we all have friends now who are in their 70s and in their 80s and are flourishing and thriving. And to see them as seniors, we go like, oh, you're a senior? Because we have this way that when somebody is a senior or older or past 60, they're not able to function. So, when I think about it, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because we just do not honor those that we hold in high esteem or should hold in high esteem in our society.
Yeah, and you spoke to me truly because I was raised by my grandmother, and what we're accustomed to is Granny would be the center of the family, and in a place of high honor, the person that gave the advice that really raised all of us, regardless of the generation. And so the part of the issue, I think, for us, or one of the dimensions of the issue for people in our community, is that there is a bit of a culture shock and a culture shift coming here, and the way that elders are treated and considered. So let's get into the meat of the matter. What do you think is the cause of and the underlying causes of abuse of our elders in this context? Vera, would you comment on that?
Okay. All right. Some of the factors that causes abuse is that the person who is the caregiver is just thrust into that caregiving what should I call it, position. They didn't plan to be in that caregiving position. And I think of my mother who is now pushed into that position. Um, if if I am so suddenly put into the position of a caregiver, you have to look at how do I see things? Am I well enough? Am I mentally well enough to do this? For instance, I might have a mental illness. I might be at home with my parents, and now one of them has, say, let's say, getting dementia. And but I already have a mental illness where I am not too stable. You can see how that would cause some type of abuse because I really am not trained to do that, right? I might be an alcoholic or on drugs. How are you going to take care of someone when you are put into that position? I might have other health problems that are an issue in my life. I can't take on any more of this. And also I might be someone who has some kind of disruptive behavior. It might not be constant, but intermittent disruptive behavior, right? Or I may have had a traumatic event that have happened in my life, and that experience render me incapable of carrying out this kind of care. Might be under high stress levels. Maybe the job that I'm in is very highly stressed. And now you have to come home to this stress at home. So stress at work, stress at home, you like your hands are tied. You don't know what to do. You're going out of your mind. And I think those are some and the fact is you're ill prepared for it because it's just been thrust upon you. You have no training for it at all. And
Mhm.
that causes a lot of time for the individual who is what we say gone off the deep end because of all that's happening. That causes them to render behaviors towards this individual who don't really deserve it. Do they actually
Yeah, there
want?
might be maybe some resentment that develops around the demands of taking care of an elder when you have these other pressures.
It could be because, for instance, they have some. I read years ago about this woman who had this this child who had some sort of mental issues, and she was trying to kill the child because she could not take the stress anymore from looking after this child. This child is now an adult, and
Right.
she is older, and she still have to be taking care of this child. And she tried to I think she allowed him to inhale. I don't know if you remember it, inhale the exhaust from the car, the carbon
Mm,
monoxide, so that the
mm,
child would die, you know. And
yeah.
it's because of the stress that she's under. When you're looking after someone who has Alzheimer or dementia, it comes with a lot of stress because they don't know what they are doing. Their long-term memory is intact, but their short-term memory is no good. So for instance, if they're an electrician, you better plug up all the outlets them in the home because they're going to be fixing electricity all the time and they can burn the
Mm,
place down. So
yeah.
these are some of the things that causes it. The person is ill prepared to carry
Right.
out that kind of care.
And Janelle,
So yes.
if I could add to that piece there, because that is some of the common things, but I think one of the things we must not neglect is there are people who are just out for the money because they live in an entitled thinking, and they
Yes.
see an opportunity to take advantage of, a senior, whether it's a caregiver, whether they're in assisted living, whether they're in a nursing home, whether it's family members, it's happening. And then let's be real, they're just mean-spirited people,
Mhm.
and mean-spirited people will abuse. I want to say that in a simple term, abuse is the abnormal use of a thing, and therefore it's an abnormal use of a person. And so if you don't value somebody, if you don't consider, and if you don't value yourself, you will abuse yourself and you will abuse somebody else. And so this is one of the things that causes, in addition to what Vera said, that will add to the mistreatment of our elderly in society. And that lack of patience and know-how and the training and the stress is so big. But some people are just let's be real, they're
Yeah.
just mean spirited.
Mm-hmm.
And they've
Yeah.
grown up. And I'll add this last piece.
For sure.
Abuse fosters abuse. So if somebody has come from an abusive background, that's what they know. Their trauma continues to show up in other ways. And so if they
Mhm,
end up taking care of whether it's a relative or end up in the position, they will inevitably abuse.
mhm. Yeah. Well, it seems as though there are a lot of things that are happening with the families who are in the caregiving experience that cause them to be in that position. It's either they don't know, as I've heard you're saying, they're not trained, they're thrust into a situation where there's a level of expertise that they just don't have, or there are all these other pressures and things that they're going through. And you know the saying that hurt people hurt people. So
Yes.
when they are going through those things themselves, maybe they are suffering from abuse and then they're thrust into the situation. But what about when it's not, when it's subtle? I know we don't tend to think of abuse when we think about things like neglect. Like I think for us, growing up, it was unheard of to put your parent in a home, or that parents would live separate from us as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's a lot of negative talk about your in-laws, your mother-in-law, and there's been some, like you said, real talk. There's been some negativity in families going both ways, and maybe that when that elder starts to age and become frail and so on, they're not going to get the love and treatment and care if the relationship was fractured earlier on. So I think there's so many root causes that lead to this breakdown in the natural relationship. But I can't help but think that some of it is related to the way that we live in the society and the way that our society values the aging process. Any thoughts about that?
I want to jump in here because, we kind of focus too, as well as the family and the caregivers, the immediate caregivers, but we have to remember the paid caregivers that our seniors tend to be vulnerable. I mean, and, depending on if you have family members that care or are involved in your life, abuse is that interesting thing that it breeds on fear. So if somebody is vulnerable in a state, whether it's they go to a nursing home, whether somebody coming to their home because they're living by themselves, and we that emotional abuse and that emotional fear is shocking to someone who is not a senior, far less when you're senior. And we have to also remember that financial abuse that happens, holding people hostage, whether it's through even their, paying their rents or saying you're going to pay their bills and or going to do their groceries, but you're taking some money on the side, but you're not really buying all the groceries and saying that, oh, everything is so expensive. That's some of the subtleties that a senior may not see because Nicole, can you go shopping for me? And I take a little piece off the side. Or can you go and do my little banking for me? And I take a little piece off the side. And the electronic age that has happened, I'm looking at the banks and I think right now the financial institutions need to be held accountable. They're doing so much automation. They're not thinking about our seniors. And I look at right here in my area here, and I look at all the banks, and they've taken out counter services. And so therefore they're making it hard for seniors who would go into the bank or get somebody to take them to the bank to do their own business. They have to rely on others. And that relying on others is creating an atmosphere for abuse. And that to me is one of the biggest crimes, I call it a crime of society, that we are setting up systems for people who are not electronically savvy or have access and marginalize. I don't like to call people marginalized, marginalizing them so that they cannot function.
Yeah, so I'm here. So far, we've touched on the many different types of abuse because we did. Very talked a little bit about technology before as well, and the fear that that you have even of pressing a link to get through to something. So that whole area of technology is, and you're highlighting, Nicole, that's a systemic form of abuse because when the organizations are just thinking about expanding into these areas, they're making an assumption that everyone is well versed on the use of the computer and so on. And you talked about financial abuse. So I saw also a comment in our chat there that sometimes there are scams that seniors are being taken advantage of. They're victims of that financial abuse. I've known people in my own family that have clicked through, and then next thing you know, their credit card is charged for something that they did not intend. And it's not always elders, but it's happening to the elders as well. And then you mentioned emotional abuse and neglect and those kinds of things. So I wonder, if you might comment on some of the different types, because I think sometimes when we hear abuse, we just think of physical assault or that sort of thing. And there are many dimensions to this abuse. So we can touch on, if you can touch on, comment on some of those, that would be great.
And I know
There,
Vera is going to go, and let's just make sure that we touch on sexual abuse because that's very prevalent among seniors. Go ahead, Vera.
Okay, I'm here sitting, and there is something that is not in the literature when you're doing research that I think is abuse. And because I'm coming from the Caribbean, and our grandparents, I know most of them raised us along with aunts and uncles. But there are many West Indian families that come here to this country, and then they decide, I'm going to send for my mother. When the mother comes here,
yes,
she is set in the house all the time. Don't go anywhere, just babysitting.
Mhm.
And she has no time because I am the elder for a seniors club.
Mm-hmm.
When I say we're having an outing, oh, I can't go because I have to babysit. I said, let your children find someone to babysit. You're getting older. You need to go out. They can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You talk about subtle abuse,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yes.
abuse
Yes.
because they have already raised you. Why are they stuck at home with the grandchildren all the time? I'm not
It's
saying that.
really forced labor and neglect.
Yes.
Essentially is what you're describing, forced labor and neglect. I want to be able to switch gears so we can
Yeah,
start talking a little bit about prevention and solutions and so on. But
yeah,
I want to hear a little bit from Nicole on
yeah.
this question of the types of abuse first, and
Yeah,
then we'll
I'm going to do a little bit of that. You
okay.
have the physical abuse where they cause injury to the
Mhm.
individual. So you might see black spot on the arm or they pinch them, or or you might sometimes, well, as in spousal abuse, we're not talking about they will pour hot water on them and burn their skin. Sexual abuse, right? And sexual abuse also occur in nursing homes.
Yes.
I know
Yes.
someone who was
Yes.
sexually abusing, and I wasn't there, but you have the physical abuse, you have the sexual abuse, that is behavior that is directed at an older adult without their full knowledge or consent. That person might not be able to speak. Maybe they have dementia, they're not remembering anything, but you can see the bruises on them and they're growing and so on. Or
Yeah.
sometimes the person may not be an elderly, but may still in the phase where they can get pregnant, but they cannot give consent to have this kind of
It's rape. They're raping them. Let's call it what
they're
it is.
raping them.
Let's
Okay.
Yeah.
not
So
sugarcoat it.
how is
They're
this
raping them.
person? Yeah. How is this person? How is this person pregnant? They can't, and they don't even know what's going on.
Right.
So
Yeah.
something is going on there. There's a lot of financial abuse because I'm a nurse and I have seen where people, if their family member is in the hospital and we're going to discharge them, they say
Yeah.
you can't discharge them. Why not? Oh, well, I think they're not capable of managing their own affairs. So we took over and we sold their house. And so the
Wow.
person has nowhere to go
Oh my
except
goodness.
put them in a nursing home, right? That has happened, right? And then you also have the psychological and emotional, where you make them feel like they're not worth anything and everything that happens is your fault. And if they make a mistake or they made a mess of something, you call them down and tell them how stupid they are. And so those are different types of abuse that occur. And then neglect, you withhold basic personal care. The person cannot change themselves and you will not change them. The person cannot feed themselves and you won't feed them, right? And I don't know why people do that, but it's a terrible thing to have someone sitting there knowing that they cannot eat themselves. You won't give them any food. Or if you do give the food, you just put it down there. If they don't eat it, too bad. And this is some of the abuse I will touch on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You caught it all
Yeah.
there. Caught it all.
Yeah.
Basically, it's torture. It's torturing people.
Yeah.
It really truly is. And when they're helpless, and it carries an extra shame when these are the people that took care of you and gave you life and so on. But let's talk now.
Before you go
Yes.
any further, did you
Yep.
remember some years ago when this man had his mother here in Canada living in a garage, the car garage? Do you remember
Oh,
it?
I
Yeah,
remember hearing
right
about
here
that.
in Toronto. I think it was over in Scarborough. He had
Hmm.
his mother living in a car garage all in the winter. Someone had
Not
to
heated.
in
Hmm.
the
I
authority.
remember that.
This was a West Indian person. I was
Oh,
so shocked, you know,
shocking. Yeah. And
it was
when I was working in community services, one other thing that used to happen is many of the elders that were living on their own in apartments would have their apartments taken over by drug dealers,
yeah,
and their little check that they get to buy their groceries and so on, they would take over their money and so on. And sometimes it was because they were happy to have somebody to talk to, so they would let them in. It would start out as a very supportive relationship and then lead to that, financial abuse and neglect. So strangers were doing it because the families are not checking on their seniors, or because they're leaving them living in what is supposed to be independent living, but it's not supported by family. They're out of connection with family. So I think we've covered some of the main
And here's
things that
one.
are
Here is
happening.
one.
Hold on,
Here's
just
one.
because of time, Vera, it's already 3:30. I want to
Oh,
be able
okay.
to switch gears because we also
Okay.
need to talk about intimate partner violence, right? So I wonder if we could talk about some of the ways that we can resolve or find solutions or support those who are working on solutions for elder abuse in particular. Do you have any thoughts about that? How to prevent it and what we can do about this issue?
One of the things I think is so key is this isolation. We leave people in isolation and we don't empower individuals. And, I would say we have a due diligence as we are aging in place, because we're all aging in place. How can we set ourselves up so that we are not abused ourselves? What are the things that we need? Because you say prevention is better than cure. So I want to start with the prevention piece. Because even at my age here, even I'm happy to be called now. Shoppers tells me I'm a senior, I can get a discount, but exciting times. Uh, but what do I need to make sure that I put in place for myself? Whether it's my will, what do I want to happen when it comes to if something happened to me medically and I couldn't make my decisions for myself, putting those things in place to protect yourself. Making sure that you have one or two people in your life outside of family that know what you want, and everything needs to be written down. Those financial safeguards, whether you have, we grew up where some people are still putting money under the mattress, or they don't want to put stuff in the bank. But we have to get to the point where we put some financial safeguards in place, because that's a lot where seniors are abused. I also think of this point of the reverse mentorship kind of thing, where we're always expecting seniors or elder people or mature people in society to mentor young people. But what about if young people adopt a senior, going to a senior's home, go start finding places or finding someone that you knew that was a mentor to you? And how are you doing technology-wise? How can I help you? What do you need help with? Because we have to come back into the community setting. I am fortunate enough to live in a co-op. And people go, why you still live in a co-op all these years? Because of community. We still check in on our elders. We had an elder recently that we realized that was being taken advantage of. So it was making sure that who had the number for the relative, the sister or the brother, to call and say, who is this person all of a sudden we seeing showing up? Sometimes you have to be nosy as neighbors. We got to come back into that neighborly pieces. And I'm trying to be practical, because there's some things that we can't fix immediately. Some of us advocating on the outside, we're advocating for systemic change. But how can we do practical things right now to protect our seniors where they need to be? And then we need to hold people accountable for when, I saw a question in the chat, how do you prove abuse? It's hard to prove abuse. But we have to hold people accountable. We have to start looking and saying, oh, Vera, wait, I'm not seeing Vera these days. What's happening? Why am I not seeing her? Are we checking in? Donna, how are you doing? People come to mind. Let's check in on them. Even if it's a mistake, you have to go and say, oh, let me make them a little something to eat so I could go and check to make. How can we do our own wellness checks on our love or people in society that we have met along the way? There's so much one can do when it comes to preventing elder abuse, training professionals, creating safer environments. And I would also say, we as individuals, how do we grow and develop our children to be empathetic?
Yep.
Taking them around our elders. So we have to refoster, rebuild society, because we've come into this entitlement world. How do we get back that empathy, that love? And, when we're offering help. And I would say to the seniors listening on the line, or those of you, this is not about taking away your independence. I know people want to take away some people's independence, but it's okay to ask for help. We all have to come from a place of being humble, and everybody needs to start learning how to ask for help. I know we've always had to be strong, especially the women and the men, but we need to start asking for help. And if you know someone is not able to ask for help, just give them the help that they need. Don't wait for them to
You
ask.
know, I want to touch on that piece that you're saying about being humble. There's also the opposite, where the seniors feel as though asking is a burden.
Yes.
So when they cut to ask, they apologize first. I don't want to be a problem,
Mhm.
but I need this. Do you think that maybe perhaps, very, very passive way of asking? So that's also there because they don't want to be a burden. And I
And
think
that's
that also has to do with that story that
to offer to
asking
them.
is a burden, so we need to offer.
We
So
need
it really highlights the point to offer, make yourself available, and put yourself out there to the senior. Vera, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, we're living in a society where you don't know your next door neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And we come from an environment where we know our next door neighbor. That's one of the problems.
And you
I
probably know their grandparents and their grandparents. You know the whole family line, right? Yeah, but
That's
we're
right.
isolated. We're isolated from that.
I remember there was a senior here, and
Mhm.
he looked a bit disheveled. I would have liked to help him. I really didn't know how, because this is someone who is not from my culture. And sometimes so much negative stuff is out there. They hear more of the negative stuff about our culture than the positive. And one time I went downstairs in the lobby and I sat down to speak with him, because I thought every morning he gets up and he go to McDonald's for breakfast. We are on the same floor. I can make him breakfast, but I didn't know how to go about. So I sat down beside him, thinking I would strike a conversation with him. So I said hi, and strange enough, he didn't answer.
Mhm.
And he had no intentions of talking to me. So I just left him alone, because I don't want to get into any kind of trouble. And this is one of the problems we have here. There's sometimes we can help, but when you're not from the same ethnic group, it creates a problem, because there's a lot of negativity out there. But we don't know what next door neighbor is. And go outside there, I go in the elevator and I said, "Good morning," to elderly people. One might answer, but the other's not answering, right? And
Mhm.
that's because of a lot of negative stuff. In
Mhm.
order to help someone, anyway, we still have to recognize what are the warning signs. If you don't know the warning signs, you don't know anything about you. You won't be able to kind of try to identify that something is going on.
Mhm.
You look at, if you see a person who was always smiling and whatever, and now they always look so depressed looking and anxious when people come around them, you figure something is going on. Or they kind of socially withdraw. They used to go out, but they're not going anywhere. They're just stuck at home all the time. Something is going on, you know. And especially if they have someone who they're walking with, but you can see they're afraid of the individual, you
Mhm.
know. Yeah.
Mhm.
They usually cover from the individual, right? And so we have to identify the warning signs. And if they will speak to you, you can go up and say, "How are you doing? I haven't seen you out here for a while. Are you out here today? You look kind of sad. Is there something wrong? You want to talk? Can I help you in any way?" So you can try to initiate a conversation with that person and hear what they have to say. Sometimes you or myself, Nicole, might be the only time they ever say what's wrong with them.
That's right.
So even though they may not be 100% telling the truth, you still have to believe them, because we don't
Right.
know. You can't go and
Yeah.
begin to doubt them, otherwise they're going to stop talking, right?
Mhm.
So and you don't if you ask them if they want to do something about it and they hesitate, don't push it, because you
Mhm.
see, abused persons are very fearful of repercussions.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
They're very, very fearful of it. And they figure if they say something, then and it gets back to the caregiver or the person who they live with, we don't know what they will do to them. You can't even confront that person either who is doing the care. You can't.
Absolutely. And I understand for those who want to help, and if you're living in Toronto, there are probably similar resources in other regions, but there is the Seniors Intervention and Assistance Services. That
Yes.
information is in our chat. But if you looked up Seniors Intervention and Assistance Services, also you can always call 211 and describe the situation if you need to support a senior. So maybe maybe you would like to suggest some resources for seniors as to where they can get help if they are being neglected or abused in all of the different ways. Thank you, Nicole. The senior safety line is 1-866-299-1011. I'll repeat that, 1-866-299-1011. And can we say a final word on the seniors conversation and switch gears to talk a little bit about intimate partner violence and abuse? There are a lot of similarities, but did you want to have a final word? Something that people would need to know in order to assist a senior who might be in need of
I think
help and support.
wellness checks are pretty good.
Mhm,
You've done a couple wellness checks here where I live,
mhm,
and um, and following up, making sure that, they're doing the wellness check. But when you call for the wellness check, you can do it anonymously because sometimes you may need to do it anonymously. But, if you do a wellness check and you connect with the police, saying, okay, you can contact me, or getting involved, or especially if you're living in a building or you're a neighbor, saying, okay, who can I come to? There are nonprofit organizations out there. Sometimes legal aid is available. Um, and really looking up what communities in your area that, when Vera was giving the example of somebody from a different culture, finding out
mhm.
those community centers that relate to that person's culture, that you could probably even call them and say, listen, I've been noticing, this gentleman out here, and he eats, and I think he is ABCDEFG. Do you have anybody who deals with this in your community center, or anybody that you can recommend? Because I'm concerned for his or her well-being or their well-being. And then also I would say get familiar with, we know our shelter system is pressed, but if you
Yes,
have to get them in touch with a shelter and calling, I don't know what to do, can you direct me? I think we also need to have, it's not a bad thing for all of us to have a list of places we can call for help no matter what, so that we don't have to go look it up all the time. And here's a list for mental health, here's a list for abuse, here's a list for food, because it may not be for you, but what about if you're prepared for somebody else in your society? Let's come back to,
yes,
each one. Is that we don't always have to teach one, but we can reach one. Remember that? Each one teach
Yeah.
one
yes.
organization,
Each
but
one, absolutely. Nicole, I'm going to ask you to do something for us, but I'm reminded to just let people know that we can watch this conversation, listen to this conversation on our YouTube channel for 100 ABC. So as we go to that little commercial break, I want to ask you to walk us through what is a wellness check, because you use the terminology, and is that something that a different agency comes in to do? Or are you talking about just a simple call that you can make or visit that you can make? Can you let us know how can this wellness check be conducted?
you can call 211, or you can call the police and say, I am concerned about um, someone that I've seen, a neighbor, a loved one. I haven't seen them in a few days. I have noticed that we had one where we said, there's been a lot of shouting. There's been a lot of, we stood outside the door. We've heard a lot of threatening remarks being held, or if you've actually witnessed something. And you can do this anonymously, or you can give your name if you so choose. And what would happen is, when you do a wellness check, especially when it's urgent, the police will come out right away, as quickly as they're
Oh,
humanly possible, and they will check on that person. to make sure that they're okay, and see if they need help. You can even do a wellness. Somebody has fallen. You know, a senior hasn't been you haven't seen them. We've had a couple of those hear me like, I think you need to do a wellness just because they're not answering the door. Or you know somebody that you can't enter their unit or their house, but you know something is there, and there might be a language barrier. If you went in, you might get yourself in trouble. And you say, I know I can't enter, but I know they're fallen and they can't get up. We need something right away. So I know we've been taught to fear the police, but this is an instance where the police can actually be really of really great assistance, and they will bring all the resources that they need.
It's interesting you say we've been taught to fear the police. I had the opposite idea. We've been taught to trust the police, and we've learned to fear them.
Yes, that is true. That's also
Yeah, because of the different interactions. But I must say that I've had cause to rely on police to help in situations where members of family might be suffering from mental health issues, and I'm really impressed with the way police in those circumstances have dealt with situations. But I think we also have to be mindful and to advocate to be able to say, because I've also had to say to the police, well, are you sure that arresting this person is the correct thing to do? I think they need medical help.
yeah.
And we're able to go that way. So I think people might be a little bit hesitant to call the police in a situation where maybe it's a family member that they feel is abusing their family member, and so they may not want to do that. But I think we need to use the police and watch over how they are policing our community as well, so
Yeah.
that they know that we're not just calling the police, hang up the phone, and going. We have an expectation that we're going to be asking for and getting help in the situation. I think that's a
Love that you said
fair
that. Whenever I've done a
balance.
check, I give my name and I show up. I'm there. I'm not
Yeah.
just saying it. I'm there. But as
Exactly. Yeah, we have to be vigilant in our community. We can't just simply call the police, and that's from experience. Not anything against the police. There are excellent officers out there, but as a system, because and I think that you hit on that before. Some of these things are systemic. It's not that the bank is bad or doesn't like seniors and so on, but if they're not consulting with or thinking about how seniors are going to interact with that new technology, they may be setting them up. And I think now they are turning on to, because I've seen a lot of information coming out and directed at me from the bank, that I can actually go and take a, well, again, you have to be doing it online. So it presumes that you're active online, right? Yeah. So that would cut out some of the seniors. But yeah, they walk you through, this is how to protect yourself from fraud and so on. So I appreciate that they're thinking about that, but maybe we need a solution that is senior friendly, to your point, or elder friendly, depending on how you look at that. So Vera, did you want to make, I got the sense that you wanted to make a comment, and then I'd like to switch to talk a little bit about intimate partner violence.
Yes, the comment I want to make is that I'm glad Nicole brought up about the police, because we have people that come into this country from different parts of the world, and where they're coming from. Police, they're not used to nice police like we have here. They're used to seeing army people with a gun. And
yeah.
for them, when you tell them about police, that's what they're thinking. And they have no trust because their rights were never protected in that country. And sometimes, too, because of a language barrier, it's hard to get them out of what they grew up with. So, so you'll find a lot of them will not call the police. They don't want to talk to you, they get nervous, you know. And
Right.
I don't know how we can get them out of that mindset, because usually what you grow up seeing is what kind of lives with you, even though you're in a different country.
Right.
Many people who abuse, they have language barrier. They don't know anybody here, and they're taken advantage of.
Yeah, but I think to the point we were discussing, and what you've just raised as well, is that there is a sensitivity that we have to have around this idea of even calling 211, calling. There's a mistrust and maybe a discomfort with that external intervention And so some of the solutions have to do with educating ourselves as well about how to mediate that discomfort and how to advocate in that situation so that we can make sure we get the service that we're asking for and not an outcome that's undesirable to us as a result of making those calls. So thank you. I just to recap, so we talked about the different ways in which our seniors or elders are experiencing abuse, and we identified some of the ways that we can intervene as neighbors, as family members, and so on. We also discussed a little bit about the way in which it happens sometimes. It is because of all of the pressures and so on. And I think you really highlighted that, Vera, that people are thrust into these positions. We also talked about the ways in which we are using elders to take care of our needs and not really checking back in. So it's a reciprocal relationship that has to continue all through. So we don't just consider them, like I say, put out to pasture or done with their productive contribution to our lives. So thank you so much for your comments and highlighting that. So I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about intimate partner violence, because we know that it's on the rise, that now we're seeing violence against men. We're seeing violence against people who are from the LGBTQ plus community, people who are trans sexual in particular are experiencing a high level of abuse and those kinds of things. And in my work, uh, I'm really surprised to know that a lot of the cases in which there is abuse happening in a family situation where children are affected, there's a co relationship with intimate partner violence. So it's a very common problem that we're facing within the child welfare system, that we have to deal with intimate partner violence because the entire home is under siege in that regard. So I wonder if you could comment on your work or thoughts around how we can address, well, first of all, let's do the same and talk about what's happening out there in terms of what partners in intimate relationships are facing and why this abuse is happening and what's the nature of it.
So I want to start with this. Let me start with some stats. And I would say that I don't know if it's increased or what really has increased is more people are reporting what's been happening. More than
Okay.
there were 6,356 seniors aged 65 years and older who were victims of police-reported family violence in 2022, representing a rate of 87 per 100,000 of the population. Women accounted for more than half, 56% of senior victims, with a rate of 91 compared with 23 among their male counterparts.
Wow. So 66% of the seniors who are abused are women.
Yeah.
So there's a co-relationship there
There's a
with
correlation.
women, with abuse of women.
Yeah. We know that
Okay.
women have, abuse has no gender. Abuse is abuse,
Right.
and has been happening. But we know it has been prevalent for eons about women, because 44% of or 6.2 million women aged 15 and older have been reported some kind of abuse in their intimate partner relationship in 2022. And this is a stat by the government of Canada. Every 6 days, a woman in Canada is murdered, and I specifically say murdered, by her intimate partner. We sometimes like to use flowery language when it comes to abuse, and it is time for us to stop sugarcoating what people are doing. They're torturing individuals. They are not treating them with their due diligence. And we are afraid to use the word rape. And seniors are being raped, whether they're being raped at home, whether they're being raped by a relative, whether they're being raped by a caregiver, whether they're being raped in their nursing homes. It is happening. But we do know that, when it comes to this level of violence, it is it is based on fear, and you instill fear in an individual and they are not going to want to report it. It's very hard for anybody being abused, especially when the trauma starts sitting in, for them to report it. And we do know in institutions, how do you report it? Because the person taking care of you is threatening you. And who are you going to report it to? You're going to have to depend on, also say Vera was still working and she was a nurse. Can I trust Vera? And if I didn't have a relationship with her, how can I trust her to tell her that she's not going to put me in a position of more danger? And we stranger danger for young people and for our children, but we forget about stranger danger for seniors. And so intimate partner violence is real. Women have, unfortunately, when they've been told to be submissive, sometimes the submissiveness has been mistaken for it's okay for someone to violate you. And it's not okay to be violated by anyone, no matter your age. And we have to start, we're teaching that to our younger generation more quicker than we used to. But we have been taught that, it's okay. He's just having a day, or she's just having a day, or they are just having a day. Let's use all the pronouns because it's happening everywhere. And, and and I will tell anybody experiencing violence, it's not your fault. And you did nothing to do to deserve to be intimately molested and attacked. And that intimacy is not always just the full act of rape. Intimacy can take on so many levels. So it can be how they are speaking to you. You're fat, you're this. Dr. Ross Roach just did an amazing production called Sisters Calling last week. And I'll wrap up with this. It was sharing the story of a woman that came to the center for help, being abused by her partner, and her partner was basically having her at home. He would listen to her phone calls with her mother, and she would be like, mommy takes good care of me. He goes everywhere with me. He doesn't let me go anywhere by myself. But inevitably that was control, right? And it was until she saw a woman that was murdered on TV that she decided that she needed help, and she went and she got the help. And so sometimes we have to believe people when they tell us that they need help. We have to listen to sometimes the unsaid, and do not give up on individuals. We can't help everybody. We can't save everybody, but start listening. And not because of how you dress a particular way or whatever it is. There is no excuse to hurt anybody.
So there's so many things to tag on. I just want to make sure that we put them in a sequence, and so that we can really make sure that our listeners are understanding. So you talked about guilt and shame and silencing and neglect. You described it as a situation of torture. And then when you said we have to believe women, it implies that we're not believing it, that there is also a tendency to create that atmosphere of isolation and shame, and that we may not realize that we're doing that. But where's that expectation coming from, that you're supposed to be submissive, or that you're supposed to accept it? Where's that guilt coming from, that maybe you chose this partner, you chose this situation, and so you're the one who made a bad choice. And so to talk about it now might be implicating yourself as being. Is there another thing that we're missing there? Because could it be that you feel as though you've made that choice, you've married that person, or you've set out on a life together with that person, and you really want to make it work? So maybe you
shame them.
believe, but maybe you believe when they say, you know what, I'm really sorry. And then it escalates. And like, how does it get to that point where you take a person's life? There have to be signs along the way. Could you comment a little bit about that?
So you said so many things there, but remember, it's psychological warfare. When you're using somebody, you're psychologically also beating them down. Even if it's the first time, you are making sure fear is the big word. And then how do you accept that I actually chose somebody out of love? Because nobody goes into a relationship choosing to be abused, but they go into relationship hoping to be loved or validated. And then when that doesn't happen, it brings shame. And shame is a weapon all by itself. Because when you shame somebody, it takes everything out of them. And then when we as a society have been taught to judge people and say, well, she or he or they should have left, but you don't know the situation. And we need to stop. We need to come from a place of understanding and understanding what abuse really is and what happens in that. You can easily leave. You don't know how that person is being threatened. You don't know if that person is threatening their family, you know, or their siblings. And the stories, and I know, Janelle, you hear it. You hear, and Vera, I know you hear, when you hear the horrific stories of what people are capable of. I remember one individual who came to the healing center the mother was being hung by her feet off the balcony. So imagine, and imagine as a child witnessing that. What is that saying to you? Giving you one of the most extreme cases, but every case is extreme because when you are attacked here, what can you say? So the abuse.
So children do see a lot of that. So I'm going to invite the audience to join in the conversation. But Vera, you touched on some of the warning signs around elder abuse, and I think they're essentially quite similar to the warning signs for abuse of women. I wonder if you could just repeat those as we turn to the audience and see if there are some questions coming in.
Okay, you want me to repeat because I have some abuse, physical abuse signs also. Okay,
please talk. Give us what you think is relevant to this topic.
In response to something that that Nicole said, that or you yourself said, Janelle, I am not sure that every marriage was a marriage out of love, because we have parents that do arranged marriage, and sometimes they're married to someone they have never met. Sometimes it's a financial gain, and it doesn't matter. I've seen in some cultures, from even movies that I watch, it doesn't matter what the man do to the woman, because the mother is getting a lot of money from him. The woman is supposed to stay there and put up with it, right? Then another thing is because some women think because they're married to the man, then he can't sexually rape you, because it's either you pay a bride price or you're married to him. And you said, Janelle, how did it get to that? Well, some of it is a misuse of biblical application.
Yes.
That the man is the head of the house, and what I say goes. But that's not what the Bible says, because the man is supposed to treat the woman as Christ also treats the church, the head of the church. He's the head, but in a good way. But he don't look at it that way. He thinks that whatever he says goes, and he can abuse the woman because the Bible said he is the head of the house. You know? So I think that is a misuse of our biblical principles, because that's not at all what it says. So I'm not getting
that's the piece about the woman being submissive to her husband.
Submissive. But
Absolutely.
It also said the man is supposed to be submissive. He said the woman should be submissive to her husband as he is submissive to the Lord. If he's submissive to the Lord, he won't do what he's doing. You know?
Right, absolutely. Okay.
All right. So we have
it is open to the audience now. I'm inviting the audience to put up their hand so that I can see who has a question, or if you want to put it in the chat that I can acknowledge you. Go ahead, Vera.
Yes. So we know that this kind of abuse is sometimes difficult, very difficult to really detect, right? But we know that people are hit, they are slapped around, they are kicked, they are punched, they pull their hair, they rough handle the spouse, right? They throw hot water or some hot liquid and burn them, right? They beat them up, physical punishment, right? And they also tie them up, restraints, unlawful use of restraint, you're not going anywhere. And that happens a lot to people who are brought to this country here. There was one woman, she was in her house for 30 years and was not allowed to go outside, not even the backyard, you know.
Shame.
And the
Mhm.
husband go to work every day and she has to stay inside and he go out, but she don't go anywhere, right? And
Mhm.
or it can be subtle. For instance, it's cold and they want to get at you. So what they do, open the window in the middle of winter and you're dead cold and you have no blanket. That's subtle abuse, right? And also
Right.
isolating. One of the big thing that they do is isolate you from your friends and families. You have no one to talk to. An abuser does not want you to talk to anybody because they don't want, sometimes the abuser is outside, look like they're a nice person, but
Yeah.
they're terrible in the home. That's why I like the text that say, man look on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart. Because you cannot read what a person is like by just seeing them smiling on their three-piece suit and their briefcase. Sometimes those are some
Right.
of the worst persons around, you know. And so, and also they give you medication. They will get you hooked on drugs. They over medicate you so that they can control you, right? So these are some of the things that happen. So when you meet someone and you notice that they hardly want to talk to you, another thing that they do is they look on your I don't know if you know this, but I know a friend who that was being done to. They look on the car speedometer, the where it says it register the mileage, and they check the mileage between you're allowed to go to work, they check the mileage between your home and where you go to work. And if you go over 1 mile or 1 kilometer, you're in big trouble
Mhm.
because they
Wow.
check that mileage every time you go out and come back, you know?
Now that is control. Yeah, that is control. Those are
Yeah,
some of the times. So thank you for that. I see there is a great question
yeah,
coming from Sarah Onyango. And the
yeah.
question is, how should adult children go about educating their elderly parents about abuse? Do you have some thoughts on that?
I think we touched on some of that earlier as well. And I think it's, showing the technology piece is huge. How can you help them, navigate technology? Vera had mentioned that I don't want to just click any link. So they're getting their cell phones now, but we're sending them text, but we have to teach them, okay, how to recognize it's from me. And
Mhm.
and if I'm in trouble, I'm not going to send you a text. I'm going to actually call you if I'm in trouble. Or they know one of your good friends that they can check in with who can double check something for them.
Mhm.
Making sure, the key word there Vera uses isolation, not making sure that they're not in isolation,
Mhm.
connecting to community,
Mhm.
whether it's a community center or somebody where they live, where they can do something together, creating a buddy
Mhm.
system, and
Mhm.
even creating, I think of a loved one going into a senior's home, right? What could be a safe word that you can give them that if they were experiencing danger? you know, and I always think about this as a caregiver. People may call and say, well, is this and this happening in the home? But what if somebody cannot talk?
Mhm.
What if they cannot
Yeah.
share? We have to
Yeah.
equip our seniors with ways that they can communicate if they're in danger. The same way
Yeah,
we,
I can tell you that my cousin has my auntie is in a home and she randomly goes. She doesn't let them know when she's coming. So that's one way that she keeps a handle on the situation. She checks her mom's body because her mom is verbal but has severe dementia. So she's not coherent all the time and doesn't remember people. So she will go and she will check her entire body for bruises or anything that may have happened from day to day so she knows what is going. I think you gave some really interesting ideas before around. I wonder if we can delve back into that a little bit around how we can prepare for our own aging process. And
that,
in there might be some of the things that we can help our already aged folks to do. So things like making sure that you have a will. I actually was invited. I was only in my 40s, and my girlfriend was probably in her early 50s, and I was invited to her house for tea, and she had a group of her friends, and she and the topic was what to do when she dies. I
Mm.
mean, this was quite a few years ago. And she sat down, she served us a lunch, and she said, okay, well, this is what I want for, if I have a funeral, this person here will be my power of attorney for health decisions should I be unable to make those decisions. Here is this is what I want done with the china. And she didn't write down every single item on her will, but she told us, so it's like I have to go and find those notes. But we each got
Curious.
notes
That circle
as
of
to what she wants each of us to do.
Mhm.
And so there was a circle around that. And I thought, wow, I've only managed to get a will written. I'm not as organized as she is, but I thought that was a really cool idea. And I have had that conversation with both of my parents are in their 80s right now. And my mom sat me down and wrote down exactly what she wants done in the event of her death, or if she got sick and was unable to speak for herself. And I'm also my father's power of attorney for health and wellness. So those are some of the things. Those are official forms that you can get
the
from the
power,
province of Ontario to
the power
declare
of
yourself.
attorney for health.
Mhm.
Think that
Yes.
is a key one. And Sarah, I love your question. I think the key one is we always think about what we do when we die, but what about what we do when we're alive?
Mhm.
That's a key piece because it can happen to any of us at any age.
Mhm.
What are your decisions? Who do you want to take care of you? What hospital not to take me to? Which doctors I am not dealing with? Um, do you have a notebook? Like I realized the other day, I said, like, wait a second, I don't have a list of all the medication my parents are on and a list of their doctors and in one place. So I need to put that in one place. I'm like, well,
And
Nicole,
a
just
list of your passwords for everything. Because I was participating, unfortunately, I've participated twice in situations where we have to make a decision about pulling the plug for someone. And I remember I was helping towards the end of my friend's life. I was helping with banking and with all these different things. And listen, on the Thursday before she died on the Sunday, she told me, okay, so this is the password for my TD Bank machine card. Do you know that I completely forgot it because I didn't write it down. And there were different things that needed to be done and to get access to and all that. And I was like in shock. So don't trust that, you know it in your head and you're going to remember it. You have to write these things down. That's what I learned from that experience because I had gone with her and been side by side helping her. And I thought, I'm never going to forget these things. I can help. I can remember that.
stress affects
What
your
she wanted.
memory. Stress
Yeah,
affects our memory. And I think that's
that
what
is
we
correct.
have to
Yeah.
remember. And we don't intentionally want to forget something, but when we are stressed, it affects our memories. And so we go
Yeah.
back, prevention is better than cure.
Mhm.
What
Things
can
like the even the bank account number, the how to get into my mom's iPad, I have it written down, things like that, because a lot of information is there. And if you don't know it, then it takes quite a bit of time to recover some of this information. So it's good to be prepared and to have those conversations. And I know that in our community, sometimes we think that talking about death, I know that's not the topic today about abuse, but these are the areas where it can become abusive to them if they don't have the ability to speak for themselves. So while they are able to, you need to get that plan and have those difficult conversations. And talking about end of life is not taboo. I think sometimes we have thought, well, if you talk about it, you're kind of bringing it on, right?
yeah, we
Yeah.
that. And I would say to any senior listening today, if you have the ability and there's legal aid, get some legal aid, get the advice that you need. If you have children that may not be always getting along and you can, you want to set yourself up for success. And so get the legal aid, get your will done, get your living will done so that you live life according to your rules and not according to anybody else's rules. Because we may think, money is a son of a gun. A son of,
Yeah.
power and money. You want to see people change? You want to see people's true character? Give them a whole bunch of money. You want to see people desperate? You know, so you want to make sure that even though you may have, oh, my children, yeah, but your children always don't get along, and who's gonna get this? And if this one got the house, and no, it's my mommy, and I get to make the decision. I know how mommy feels about how she wants, and then the abuse starts happening because you don't want to be on life support, and this one doesn't want to see you go, and you have nothing written down, and there comes the abuse. That's
Very important.
that's that other subtle abuse that Vera was talking about that can
Absolutely.
happen and affect your way of life. I know we're running out of time, so I'm gonna just
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you talked about people taking the house away from their family members right out from under them. That can happen too when that elderly person is sick, or just like the people, it starts circling. So you do need to, people start circling for waiting
culture
for
starts.
things to fall into the lap and to see where inheritances go and so on. So
Janelle, I
and
think thing
yes,
that Vera was talking about, we were talking about the sexual abuse.
yes.
And just to say to our seniors, no means no. Sometimes we're not empowered to say no, but no is a complete sentence that needs no explanation. When you say no to your abuser, to anyone else, no means no. And remember that you are valuable. We value you. You have gone through more than any one of us can have gone through. Your age, your history is valuable. And do not let anybody misuse you in this society. There's always somewhere that you can get help. There is always someone. So don't give up. If you need help, don't give up until you get the help that you need. And don't let shame or society judge you. What your experience is your experience. And nobody can tell you what you're experiencing but you. And there's no
Excellent.
shame in the game.
I'm seeing a really great tip in our chat, which has to do with getting a recorded video of the person in their own words stating what their wishes are, so that you can follow through on that. Vera, any last
Yes.
words from you before we wrap up today?
Yes, I would like to say to any elderly who is listening that, or any relative who has an elderly in a nursing home, that that person who is bathing your mother or your father, make them aware of really inappropriate prolonged touching, because it that is also a form of abuse. Also, we talk about making up, having power of attorney and making a will. But I have seen where parents making a will for children who are abusing them.
Wow. Yeah.
Recently I saw that. And this young man who never did anything for his mother, who curses her day and night, she left him a large sum of money because the house was sold and he got half of it, and he never did anything for her. He abused her to the point where she was scared of him
Right.
in the
Yeah.
house. I'm the one she used to tell that to,
Mhm,
you know.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so don't think because they're your children, people who are helping you, you don't leave anything for them, but you give it to the abusive person.
mhm,
Don't think that you're obliged to do that, right?
mhm.
And because some of the people that we put for power of eternity, power of eternity, power of
Well,
attorney,
the power of eternity. I like that.
power of eternity, those are the same one. You say, put a little power in their hand with some money attached, and you'll be surprised at what they do. And if there was another person that I know who keep going and just removing money from his mother's bank account, and she can't do anything about it, and
Mhm,
she's telling him to pay it back, and he's in another province, she's sick, she's in a nursing home, he doesn't come to see her, but
mhm.
she was smart anyway.
So, you know, it's so important that we have these conversations and we hear these stories
Yeah.
about actual things that people are doing, because I think
Yeah.
some of us, we just can't even imagine that people are capable of that level of,
Yeah.
as you put it,
Yeah.
Nicole, torture,
Yeah.
abuse.
Yeah.
We've talked about neglect. We've
Yeah.
talked about the way in which we take for granted that our seniors are doing okay. So if I'm taking anything away from this, for me personally, it's check in
Mhm.
and make sure that they know that you're there for them. Look for the
Yeah.
signs.
Mhm.
Signs if they're acting differently, if they're withdrawn, if they are displaying signs of abuse.
Yeah.
Really be there for them, check it out. Ask for a wellness check by calling 211 or checking 211.ca and getting officials to do a wellness check on an elder or on a woman or man who may be in an abusive situation. So I
Mhm.
just want to say thank you to you for your contributions today, and a few reminders to the audience that this is the last event until January. To check out 100 ABC YouTube channel, to get the episodes that you may have missed, the wonderful fireside chat discussions. And we've really had, I agree, we've had some impactful conversations this year. I haven't been able to be at all of them, but I have watched some of them on YouTube afterwards, and I'm really always impressed with the level of knowledge and good, healthy interaction that we're able to have as 100 ABC women and the audience. So today's topic was elder and spousal abuse, and we did talk quite a bit about the need to check in, be aware, and then to prepare ourselves so that we don't fall victim to those abuse, or at least we mitigate some of the circumstances that we see happening to other elders around them. If you're living in a building and you have the good fortune to be able to do what Nicole is able to do and wrap some caring and compassionate circles around the seniors that you see, pay attention and look for those signs that Vera told us about today that may save a senior from abuse and neglect. So I just
Amen.
want to thank everyone once again for your time today. And to 100 ABC women, thank you for this opportunity and this platform for us to get together and discuss important issues in our community. Okay,
I
thank
see
you.
a fan on here. Bree says it's her first time and she loved the grateful conversation.
Oh, welcome, Bree. I hope you join again. We're back in January, so but you can
Yeah.
watch on our YouTube channel to get more episodes that you may have missed. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, everyone.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment. It's your time.